Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Growing Through It, a podcast dedicated to bringing you clarity so that you can harness your curiosity and be the creator of your life. Hosted by me, Shanae Rowe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be right now. Thank you for listening along to another episode of the podcast. Welcome. This is episode 13, and I have decided to create this one all about self-doubt. And I wanted this to be the topic of today because I have been struggling a lot over the recent couple weeks with self-doubt. Like, it has been plaguing my mind and my life for the last couple weeks. And to be honest, it's kind of frustrating, but it's also really cool to observe sort of the ways that I'm holding myself back. So I decided I'm going to create a little episode for you guys on how to recognize self-doubt as the motivator that's holding you back. And then I also want to add a little a couple of steps at the end on how to overcome and conquer the confines of our own self-doubt. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but that is a massive plane. I actually decided to record this episode at the beach, which is right near the airport. So hopefully I can get this done without another airplane flying over the top of my head because that was really bloody loud. Anyways, so yeah, let's jump into it. First things first, I want to talk about what self-doubt is so that we have like a basic understanding of what it is, how it shows up, why we have it, and yeah, sort of the purpose behind self-doubt. Because it's one of those things, like, it's not really comfortable to be doubting ourselves, and it's one of those things that like is there as a tool for us to grow and whatnot. But it's really uncomfortable, and it can be really hard to navigate self-doubt and be able to comfortably move through it and overcome it. So yeah, first things first, I always like to give a little definition of, what something is, what a feeling is, or whatever. So self-doubt, I view self-doubt as like lacking confidence in our own abilities. We don't believe in ourselves in a way. We don't have a lot of confidence, maybe about a skill that we're developing or a belief that we hold. And it sort of feels like we're suspended between two opinions, and they're contradictory opinions, right? It's like this indecision between a belief that we have and then believing the opposite of it, like belief and disbelief. And it's very much an internal experience that we go through. Self-doubt is all within our own internal world. And so it can be really hard to navigate when obviously we can't see an emotion, we can't see that doubt, but we feel it. And when we don't know sort of maybe what we're looking for and how to identify self-doubt, that can keep us in this loop of really, doubting ourselves and our abilities and not having the confidence. And then that in itself can lead to like low self-esteem and a whole heap of other issues. So yeah, that's sort of like how I view self-doubt. And it can look different for different people, it feels different. But self-doubt, it tends to come up, or I believe that self-doubt tends to come up when, the experience that we're living right now causes like previous chapters and versions of ourselves to resurface. And so we embody the mindset of that wounded inner self, and we act out in the ways that we did back in that previous chapter. And I think like self-doubt is one of those things that, right now, say, like for me, I'm just gonna put it out there. Let's just put a little example of me in there. Like, I've really been struggling with this podcast and putting my beliefs and opinions out into the world. It's actually fucking scary. And I find it so challenging because right now, what I feel like what the world is asking of me is, to believe in my voice, to believe in my right to take up space. And then because of that, I've got all of these, old thinking patterns and limiting beliefs that are coming up that tell me like, nah, maybe let's not do that. Let's not share what we think with other people because that's really scary. And like things happened in the past, that show me that maybe I should fear it. And so that's what I mean about how sort of we return back to this mindset of a previous wounded inner self, right? We come back to that place and we operate out of that. And for me personally, like that's where I think self doubt tends to come from, and a lot of other emotions tend to come from. It's learnt behavior. But yeah, what are some things that sort of bring about self doubt? It can be a new job, like you're starting somewhere new, maybe you don't have any experience in the position that you're in. And that's when our minds tend to take over, tell us that, we don't know enough, we're going to look silly, we don't really know what we're doing. It's all this anxiety and stress and just sort of feeling out of place and unfamiliar in our environment. And it leads to us doubting our capabilities of what we have the potential to achieve. Travel brings it out as well. Like for me, when I was traveling, there were times when I genuinely was like, what the heck am I doing? There is no way that I can find solutions to things like really hard things that I was going through in the moment, like physical challenges like van breakdowns and, getting lost and having to be solution focused. Self doubt creeps in those times, and it's the same with when you're studying or you're taking exams, doing tests, and it's like this little voice in your mind is like, but can I actually do it? Right? Same with sports and competitions and anything where you're getting outside of your comfort zone, right? Or you're doing something unfamiliar, something scary, and there's an opportunity there for this little voice in your mind to resort back to old patterns and old ways and ask like, hey, maybe we're not that great or we're not that good or we don't deserve to say, how we feel, or we might muck up, we might make an error, we might fail. And, that is sort of how self-doubt can look in different situations, and it all varies. And I think it's important to notice the way that we talk to ourselves when self doubt creeps in. What do we say? Are we negative? Are we hard on ourselves? Do we believe that we can't, or are we just telling ourselves that we can't? Like I can't do this. I can't complete this task that my boss is asking me to do, or I can't pass this test. I haven't studied enough. I don't know enough about the content. I genuinely I feel like I can't do it, right? And, like we feel bad internally, and that can lead to us sort of isolating ourselves and things like that. And I think it's interesting to note that the more we doubt ourselves, the more we're likely to doubt other people and their abilities and sort of see maybe the worst in other people. And that's when I feel like that's when we tend to give tough love to other people. We're not showing up in this vulnerable state to other people because we actually don't believe that we can, or things are stopping us or getting in our way, or we're doubting our sense of self and who we are. And we show that outwardly in the form of, tough love, of not being genuine. And I think that's really harmful. Anyways, I feel like I got a little bit off topic there, sort of maybe. Um, but let's bring it back. Yeah, so I actually found a little statistic. 85% of people struggle with self doubt at some point in their lives. That doesn't mean that, you know, 85% of people right now are struggling with it. Like, if had a group of 10 people, there wouldn't be 8.5 people that were currently doubting themselves. It's just at some point in people's lives, like the high majority of people have doubted some part of themselves and who they are and what they're capable of. And so basically all I'm trying to say is like it's completely normal. It's such a fundamental part of being human, and I think because it's so normal, it's important to start to um get curious about where these thoughts of doubting yourself, of thinking you're incompetent, where are they coming from? Where did they begin? Like, who is saying them in your mind? Like, where did you learn this from? Where did you learn how to doubt yourself? I also wanted to touch on the difference between self doubt and self esteem. I think that self-doubt, like I said before, it's lacking the confidence in our abilities. Like we we don't know what to believe about ourselves. Whereas self-esteem is sort of is our own opinion on ourselves, and it's how we see our worth. It's how we view our worthiness or our worthlessness. It's what we believe about our achievements and about our abilities. And I honestly think you can have high self esteem and still have self doubt. Definitely. I personally, like, I would say that I have high self esteem. Like, I really enjoy who I am and the qualities that I have. And of course, like, I am still working on myself, and there are still parts that I would like to change about myself and overcome and work through. But for the most part, I like genuinely love who I am and what I do with my days and my life and the direction that I'm headed. But I still feel, you know, engulfed by self-doubt. And I think that I think you can exist and you can be really content and happy and just in love with your life and your accomplishments and believe that you have high worth and still doubt a specific part of yourself and a specific challenge that you're facing. And what I've come to notice is that, like, usually with self doubt, where we're doubting just one specific thing, we're doubting one part of ourselves, and I like to think about sort of what is the old self, what older version and part of me is being triggered right now. And so, like, if you look at self doubt in that sense, that it's just a little factor of just your entire existence, it's just one challenge that you're facing where you're doubting yourself, you can, like, more easily identify how to overcome it and, not put all of your energy into just continuing to doubt yourself. If you can understand and identify that you're only doubting maybe like a new job, or you're only doubting yourself when it comes to taking this test or this exam, you can manage it easier. And I think, like, prolonged self doubt, when you aren't able to identify it and notice that it's only a little part of your life, that can lead to low self esteem. That is what, builds up. And that's where we start to, lose faith in ourselves and our abilities, which, leads to low self esteem. So, yeah, moving on from that, like, how does self doubt hold us back? If we leave self doubt unchecked, if we're constantly like believing that we can't do something, we can't achieve anything, we're never going to overcome this challenge in our life, like, what happens? And I think, like, self doubt is a mindset thing. You're operating from a mindset that, you no longer embody or you don't have anymore, but that mindset is coming back. I think, like, the more we learn and the more we grow, the more that we're able to develop how we think, and we're more clearly able to observe our thoughts the more we move through life. And I think self doubt is one of those things that pulls you back to a time where you didn't have that ability and you didn't have that, like, the capacity to observe your thoughts. So I think, yeah, it's a mindset thing, and it prevents our success, because if you think about it, if you're doubting yourself and you're thinking in this lower sort of vibration that, you don't have any confidence, maybe you've got a little bit of fear, of looking silly in front of people, that, like, stops us from doing it in the first place. And if we let our mind take over like that, when we doubt ourselves to the point where we're not completing something, like, you could say that doubt makes us quit. Self-doubt holds us back because it stops us from actually achieving something, and it causes us to quit, right? Our minds become so powerful that we begin to believe what it's telling us, and we forget that we can just take a step back and we can actually think about what we're thinking. We can observe our thoughts and we can be like, oh, hey, I actually don't believe this about myself. And I understand that maybe at some point in my life I did. Maybe at some point in my life I doubted my capacity to achieve things because I was scared of failing. Like, just being able to observe that is so helpful in overcoming that self-doubt, right? Like I was saying before, like the more that we leave self-doubt unchecked, the more that it can lead to low self-esteem and like really having low confidence in who we are and not believing in ourselves. Um, it's the same when we don't process our experiences, when we don't really understand and process the fears and the failures of our past. They can really, we can internalize them, and then they can become a limit and something that holds us back along with the self-doubt. It's what we believe about the self-doubt that really is what's holding us back. But I think it's really interesting and important to remember that just like any emotion or internal experience, it's not there to hurt us or cause us, prolonged pain or suffering. It's there to serve a purpose. And so I think there's a few things that I believe self-doubt is there to teach us, and like the purpose of self-doubt. There's a few things I believe are the purpose. And I think one of them is when we do experience self-doubt, it's a very strong way that we can indicate and sort of realize within ourselves that we're pushing ourselves, right? We're outside of our comfort zones, and we're pushing ourselves outside of our own limits and sort of what we know to be true in our lives. And we're challenging our own personal boundaries, and I think self-doubt is a really surefire way to really understand that we're getting uncomfortable, and we're learning and we're growing. And yeah, like moving on from that, like another purpose is growth, failing at something. Like even if our self-doubt is right, failing means learning. And learning is always an opportunity to become a new person and to take on new beliefs and perspectives that are shown to us. Everything is an opportunity for our own growth. And I think self-doubt really, it reveals that to us. And you know, even if our doubts do in a way come true, even if there is some, logic behind, how we feel about a situation that might not be positive, it's not about failing, it's about how we get back up, right? It's about what we do with that failure. Do we internalize it, and do we, push it down and not address it, and therefore turning it into more, trauma and something to learn from in the future? Or do we just then and there be like, hey, you know what? I failed, or, I actually wasn't good at, this task that my boss gave me, or I actually did fail this test. But, like I'm not going to let that get to me, and I'm going to like try harder next time, or I'm going to push myself even more. Like self-doubt can mean failing, and failing just means learning. And I think that's a really powerful way to move through the world when you have that perspective about failing and your failures and your fears. Another purpose I think self-doubt has is that it keeps us grounded, right? It brings us back to reality. We are just humans experiencing this world, right? It keeps us humble. When you find that balance of self-doubt and self-confidence, you find home within yourself, and kind of in a way feel sort of indestructible. But you're not outwardly I don't want to say cocky. You're not outwardly boastful about it. It's more like this quiet assuredness and belief and trust. Something that I also wanted to talk about was, like, I was talking about my self-doubt with a friend. Like I was talking about my own like self-doubt about this podcast and about, doing things wrong and looking wrong. I was talking about this with a friend, and they just told me like it's okay, like just prove yourself wrong. It's a beautiful reminder to have, you know, even if you don't have someone else telling you that, just to be able to tell yourself that you can believe this self doubt, but you can also prove that it is wrong. You can prove yourself wrong. You can still, be scared that you're going to fail a test, show up anyways and pass it so that you can look back and be like, you know what? I can't believe that I did that. I didn't think I was going to pass. And I did. And I'm really proud of myself. Like, and soaking in those emotions, that gratitude, that fulfillment, that relief that you were wrong, that self doubt was wrong. It's really this healing part of self doubt when you've made it through all of the negative emotions and feeling like you're not good enough. Like the other side is that sweet, beautiful relief that you proved yourself wrong, that you actually did that thing and that you are capable, which, yeah, I think is really beautiful. And like, if you haven't heard of that, and if no one, if people don't tell you to prove yourself wrong when you're doubting yourself, then by all means, add this little phrase into your vocab. And hopefully, um, it'll just be that little thing that helps you believe in yourself a bit more. But then I was sort of thinking and thinking and thinking, and I was like, yeah, prove yourself wrong. But part of me was also like, what if you prove yourself right though? Because I feel like when we do doubt ourselves, we've obviously got this big booming voice in our head that's like, you can't do it, you're not enough, you don't deserve this, or, you can't do it. But I also feel like with self doubt, you've also got this little voice, right? It's not booming, it's not loud, it's just this little faint voice in the back of your mind that's like, but I can. I wouldn't have the thought of achieving this thing or accomplishing this or creating this thing if I couldn't do it. And so I also think like the opposite of prove yourself wrong. I think prove yourself right. Listen to that little voice that's telling you that, what, you can do it. You are competent and capable and powerful. Listen to that and prove that right. And I think it's sort of like a little paradoxical phrase where part of us knows where, you've got this big bad wolf voice that's operating from learnt behavior and previous experience that's telling us like that we can't, we're not enough, we'll never achieve this thing. And then you've got the flip side that's like truly believes that we can achieve what our mind doesn't believe is possible, you know? But yeah, that little phrase, like that conversation with a friend, it really got me thinking about, the paradox of self-doubt, of that you want to prove yourself wrong, you don't want to listen to the doubt, but then you've also like the doubt allows us to prove ourselves right. It allows us to listen to our intuition and what we know is good for us, and listen to that little voice and prove that right. And I think for me, I found that to be really powerful. And then like the reward and the satisfaction that you get from proving yourself right, it was like, hey, I knew that I could do this. Part of me deep down knew that I could do it, and I did it. And like, I'm so proud of myself. Like, that feeling is better than being like, ha, you were wrong. I told you, Shanae. I told you to get that podcast recorded and edited and uploaded by this deadline. And, I proved you wrong. You were telling me that you couldn't. I proved you wrong. Like, I feel like that's helpful. But I think when you're giving love to yourself, when you're being like, I knew you could do it. I knew that you were capable and that you had the capacity to do this, and you're so brave, and I'm really proud of you for accomplishing this. Like, that feels nicer than proving yourself wrong. Like, prove yourself right. Doubt yourself and prove that little voice in your mind that it is right. So yeah, moving on from that, what I have noticed, and it might not be true for everybody, but what I have noticed with my own self-doubt when it does surface in, certain times, there are some little tools and there are some ways that help to overcome it and move through it, and that really just help us conquer the cages that we place on ourselves through self-doubt. And I think the first thing that is super important is to own it. Like, have that awareness that this is self-doubt. You are doubting yourself. Give it a name. Like, be honest about how you feel and tell people. I think it is so powerful to have these thoughts in the first place, to have our own self-awareness, to own how we feel, even if it isn't sort of happy, bubbly feelings. And like, it is so important to tell people those things, how you're feeling, the inner workings of your mind, because you speak it into existence. And the act of doing that allows us to remove the shame that we feel surrounding self-doubt and surrounding any sort of like negative feeling, emotion. The next thing that I found is just to get curious about the doubt. Where does it come from? What is the root cause? And it tends to be like, a specific limiting belief that keeps coming back over and over and over. And that limiting belief is accompanied by sort of words and phrases that you tell yourself in the times of doubt. So, what are they? What do you tell yourself when you doubt yourself, right? Do you tell yourself that you are hopeless, that you're worthless? Do you tell yourself that you can't? It's too scary. You just can't do it. You're going to fail. You're going to look stupid. You're going to look awkward, right? What do you tell yourself when you are doubting something in your life? And are those words and phrases yours? Are the things that you're saying to yourself actually, truly your words, or have they come from someone else or something else? Have they come from your parents? Have they come from um, like a school environment or a work environment? Have they come from greater society and all the big, you know, all the big, heavy, hard to unpack, beliefs that society have taught us? Are these things you're telling yourself yours? Whose are they? Identify that. Get curious about these things, right? And where did they come from? Where did they come from? If they are not yours, whose are they? Where did they come from? And why are you still believing them? Because your doubts are not your truth. Your doubts are just your thoughts that your brain is operating from a lower frequency and vibration. That's all it is. They're not yours. They're not yours in this moment. They might be yours from, an older self. They might be yours from when you were 12 years old. Maybe you internalized something that happened to you and now you have all of this self-doubt that resurfaces when you try something new. But then think about, where did that come from for a 12-year-old? Like, who was telling your 12-year-old self that, you're a failure, or that you're worthless, or that you can't achieve anything, right? Where did they come from? And I think after you sort of start to unpack that, it's time to recreate. Change the narrative of your thoughts. You're able to identify sort of the root cause of your specific self-doubt. So now it's time to give yourself some self-compassion and a realignment, a readjustment. Change the way that you talk to yourself. Be more compassionate and empathetic and kind. Don't tell yourself that you're hopeless because you feel like you can't succinctly portray how you feel and tell people how you feel about things. Give yourself some love and be like, hey, this is something you struggle with because of this belief that's really, coming out right now. And that's okay. You're allowed to feel like that. But in order to not feel like that, we're going to do this instead. Reparent yourself. Think about what your values are. Do you want to be living courageously? Do you want to be more authentic? Do you want to bring creativity everywhere you go? Do you want to be adventurous and vulnerable, right? Think about your values and then ask yourself, are you living up to these values by believing the doubts that you have? And if not, how can I change the way that I'm thinking so that I can be more in alignment with my core values? How do I change my self-talk, and how do I change these beliefs so that I can be a kinder person, or a more loving person, or a more courageous woman or man, or whoever is listening? All right. So yeah, recreate your story, change the narrative. And then I think the final step, I don't know why I'm calling them steps, because it's not like this is going to cure your self-doubt. It's just sort of, something that I've come to learn. But the last little thing I want to mention when it comes to sort of overcoming some self-doubt that you're experiencing is to remember mission over fear. All right. You are a human, all right, with all these complex thoughts, and you have this beautiful body, right? You are the one bringing something into existence. You are the vehicle that allows your thoughts to become a physical thing, a physical entity, right? You are the one bringing something to life, right? And I think that when we are pursuing something, right, when we do need to put in the hard work to accomplish our, our mission in life, our greater purpose, we will always have fears and doubts about whether we can achieve them. But it's so important to remember that the point of our existence to is for our fears and our doubts to be triumphed. It's to find a way through. It's to find a way to become better, to be a better person and change our thoughts and our beliefs and our values so that we can continue our pursuit of our, life purpose and our mission. And so it's always important to just remember in the back of our mind that being here as a person, I know it probably sounds bloody fucking cringy, but it is magic and it's beautiful, and we are here just to share what we know with other people, right? Whatever that is. And the fears and the doubts that come up in that pursuit, like it is a fundamental human experience and emotion, right? But when we can balance on the edge of self doubt and like immense self belief, then like that's when we are able to become a creator, and that's when we are able to become an artist of our own lives. And I think that is what helps us move through self-doubt and move through our fears. It's always just remembering why we're here, what we're doing, what brings us joy, what allows us to feel immense gratitude and fulfillment. What is that thing? And are you willing to continue to chase after that with your fears and with your doubts? Are you willing to put in the work and be brave enough to actually, you know, do what your soul is feeling drawn to do? And are you willing to dig up all of your doubts and your limiting beliefs that are stopping you from getting there? Um, yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening. I hope the sound on this isn't too crazy. It's quite windy here at the beach, but I am getting my tan on and the sky's blue, so I'm pretty fucking happy. Um, yeah, and hopefully the airplanes weren't too loud with that one, but yeah, thank you everybody for listening all the way through. I love you. I appreciate you. It means the world to me. Share it around as always, with the people that you love and care about. Um, yeah, I hope you have a really wonderful, beautiful week and the sun is shining and you get out in nature and, do the things you love, spend time with the people that you care about. But yeah, thanks for listening. The world is waiting for you, so get on out there and enjoy your big, beautiful life. Love you. Bye.